I'm going to talk very quickly, and you can pause this video if you need to, take your notes down. We basically wrote notes on a piece of paper, and you could easily just take out a regular piece of paper. We just had words on a paper, but you could just take out a regular piece of paper to write your notes, or you could print off what's on the wiki to write your notes. The first one we went over is trial and error, and trial and error is when you go through every option to find a solution. So I gave the example, if I had given you my set of keys, how would you figure out which one opens the door? You'd try each key until you found the right one. Now, because I gave you my keys, you know probably one of those keys is the solution. So a lot of times trial and error can give you the solution, but it doesn't always. So for example, let's say there were 3 different sets of keys to choose from, or maybe hundreds, and you had to find the one to my door. Eventually, you would find it with if you had every key, but what if all the keys of the school weren't in that pile or something? So trial and error. That's trial and error. Okay, now algorithm is the next word we went over, and an algorithm is a step-by-step formula or procedure that you follow that guarantees you a solution. Again, you want to write down step-by-step formula or solution that guarantees you a solution. So for example, if I follow directions, that's step-by-step assembly, I'm going to get a bike. Unless some part is missing, right? It's very methodical, it's slow, and this gives you the answer. Though a lot of math formulas like the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, it gives us the correct solution if we follow it carefully and faithfully. So step-by-step algorithms are very good because you do get to the solution, but they take longer, and there's not always an algorithm for everything in life. So here's a step-by-step book, how to get out of bankruptcy. But for example, do you think there's a step-by-step book on how to raise a child, or a step-by-step book on how to live a great life? Some things don't have an algorithm. So in the cases where there is a formula that gives you a solution, great. You could, oh yeah, okay. There's now a Big Bang clip. You can watch it. I put it in the email that shows how Sheldon from Big Bang tries to create an algorithm for friends. Heuristics is different than an algorithm. Like I said, algorithms take a long time, whereas heuristics are snap judgments, quick thinking. Heuristic, think quick. So heuristic is thinking quick, a snap judgment, a general rule of thumb, thinking quick, snap judgment, general rule of thumb. This is very much faster than an algorithm when you think like this. However, you want to write this down. You do not always get to the solution. You do not always get to the solution or the right answer. So for example, one heuristic that we might use to solve deforestation, all over the world, forests are coming down. Maybe we need a new way, a new job or a new behavior for people who seem to cut the trees down. So for example, in a lot of South American countries, poor farmers or peasant farmers are cutting down the trees because it makes money, and they're trying to survive. Well, maybe if we could find them a different job, they wouldn't need to cut down the trees. Here's another example of heuristics or quick thinking, a snap judgment. Who would you trust to babysit your child, the pierced man or the old lady? Now, a general rule of thumb is the old lady's better, right? But it doesn't guarantee it. Maybe she's mean and he's actually a really nice guy who just likes punk rock music. So, yes, heuristics let us solve problems very efficiently, very quickly, but we may not always get to the right solution. All right, insight is the next vocab word, and this is when you have that aha moment. I like to call it an aha moment, AHA, an aha moment, when you suddenly realize the solution to a problem. There's no strategy. It's just when all of a sudden you think of the right answer. Okay, so let's try this example. Let's have an aha moment now. What's the next letter after this chain of letters? OTTFFSS. What's the next letter? This was in our textbook, but you might have not gotten to this part yet. Anybody? All right, let me give you a hint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What's the next letter? I'll wait till you have that moment of insight. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's right. If you said E, you're correct. Did you have that moment where you're like, oh, that's insight? Okay, the availability heuristic. Basically, on the back of the chart for the lesson today, we have a T-chart that's going to differentiate the availability heuristic and the representativeness heuristic. But we really only got to availability heuristic in class. So don't copy this whole slide, but the best definition is that we think something is more likely because it comes to mind first, or it comes to mind easily. We think something is more likely because it comes to mind first, or it comes to mind easily. Again, if you need to rewind or pause, I know I'm going very quickly. We think something is more likely because it comes to mind first or comes to mind easily. Try this on a piece of paper, number 1 to 4, and tell me what you think is the right answer. Which is more deadly? Now again, what pops in your mind first may not be the right answer, but that's a heuristic. So number 1, if you didn't already get to it, which is more deadly, asthma or meningitis? Number 2, you just write down A or B on your paper. What is more deadly, breast cancer or stomach cancer? Number 3, what is more deadly, lung cancer or motor vehicle accidents? And number 4, is the flu or stomach ulcer more deadly in the USA? Well, here are the answers. 6 times as many people die from asthma than meningitis. That means if you picked A for number 1, you were right. Asthma's deadlier. Now, most people are going to think meningitis is deadly. We hear much more about that on the news. 3 times more people die of stomach cancer than breast cancer. Again, if you put B for number 2, you got it right, but most people hear about breast cancer and they hardly ever hear about stomach cancer. 4 times more people die of lung cancer than car accidents. Wow, that surprised me. Number 3 is A, the right answer. 2 times more than all types of accidents combined. That's how many more people die of lung cancer than all accidents. And then 2 times more people die of stomach ulcers than the flu. Number 4 should have been B. Again, more people would have probably guessed the flu. They hear about that on the news, and you rarely hear about people dying of stomach ulcers on the news. So the availability heuristic works because something pops in our mind. We think, oh, I've heard of that before. Or, ooh, that's what I pictured. Or, ooh, that's something that came to my mind first. So it must be right. It must be more likely. But the fact is, statistically, things could be different than what pops in our mind first. All right, so make a guess. What do you think is the number 1 USA killer out of all these choices? Is it guns, foodborne illnesses like salmonella, the flu, terrorism, car accidents? Which do you think is more deadly? If you said car accidents, you're right out of these choices. Now, if we had lung cancer here, that would have been number 1. But out of these choices, car accidents. All right, which country has more people? These are all examples, by the way, of availability heuristics. So under your definition, I would definitely write as an example, we think some diseases are more deadly because they come to our mind first. And then I would also give the example of maybe 9/11, where in 9/11 people thought they were going to die of airplane accidents more when actually car accidents kill more people. That sort of was portrayed on this last slide. You know, a lot of people think terrorism kills more people than it does. And then the third example I'd write for availability heuristic under my definition is we tend to think that some countries have more people because they come into our mind first. Again, we tend to think that some countries have more people because they come to our mind first. So out of these choices, which has more people? Morocco or Saudi Arabia, Myanmar or Australia, Vietnam, South Africa, Sri Lanka or Libya? Write down your answers. Maybe even pause the video because I'm going to go show the answers here in a second so that you can write down your answers. And then here it is. Morocco has way more people than Saudi Arabia. Myanmar, which used to be called Burma in Southeast Asia, has more than double the size of the continent of Australia, which is very surprising. That's near Laos and Cambodia and the Southeast Asian countries. Vietnam has double the people of South Africa. Sri Lanka, which is just a tiny island off the coast of India, has way more people than Libya, which is in northern Africa. And Tanzania has way more people than Iraq. I think we missed that example. But you get the idea. What pops in your mind first isn't always the right answer, but it is a type of heuristic that whatever pops in our mind, we think it's more likely. Now, the last example I want to give with availability heuristic is when diseases or even, sadly, school shootings occur, we tend to think they're more prevalent or threatening than they really are. So for us right now, we have recently experienced the Parkland, Florida shooting, and it's very current. It's actually only happened 2 weeks ago. It's their first day of school today, that they're going back in their school. And so we tend to have this thought that when these kind of events happen, that they're going to be more likely, they're going to happen to us. And so I want you to watch the video in the forum by Hans Rosling and what he has to say about this. But I know even for me, I have to admit, even though I teach this topic and I know my mind is playing tricks on me because it just pops in my mind and I think it's more likely, I thought I was going to get swine flu when that came out. When Ebola happened, I thought I was going to get that. When kids were getting whooping cough, I thought I was going to get that. So it's very common to think things are more likely because they pop in your mind first. Thanks.